All right, we're at 1201 and Burgundy Street. So this is right around the corner from Clay Shaw's house. And this is the location. This is a little bar. And again, we're still in the front quarter, but not in the business part of it necessarily. It's not quite as busy. But again, right around the corner from Clay Shaw's house. And this is the bar where, according to Jim Garrison, early in the investigation, he got his first big break. Remember, the big question is, he asked his friend Dean Anders, who is Clay Bertrand? And Dean wouldn't tell him. And he said they went around. It was like a big secret. No one would tell him. And they couldn't get anybody to go on the record who Clay Bertrand was. And he comes to this bar, and this is in late 1966. So this is 3 years, almost to the day after the assassination. And this is just a small, crowded tavern deep in the quarter. And he says we had our first break here. This, according to the bartender, is where Dean Andrews had mistakenly opened his mouth earlier and told Wesley Liebler that he believed he'd once seen Clay Bertrand, and then he told the bartender who he was. And so, in the course of the investigation, Garrison found out about this bartender. And since Andrews won't tell him, he thinks, well, maybe since he already had this conversation with, people tell bartenders stuff. And Dean Andrews got loose with his tongue and must have told the bartender. So here comes Garrison knocking on the bartender's door, says, who is this Clay Bertrand? I know you had this conversation with my friend Dean. Who is he? And the bartender said, I don't understand what the big mystery about who Clay Bertrand is. As far as I'm concerned, everybody in this part of the quarter knows who Bertrand is. And Garrison's like, I need a name. And the bartender finally says, it's Clay Shaw. And so that's the beginning of the onion being peeled. Garrison's trying to figure out who's in charge of this conspiracy here in New Orleans. And primarily what he wants to know is who had tried to arrange legal representation for Oswald. And so when he finds this out, now all of a sudden his sights are set on Clay Shaw. And from that point forward, he starts looking for corroboration, what the bartender told him. That's why he talked to Dean Andrews. Dean Andrews would not corroborate it, but he did get it corroborated other ways. And as a result, felt justified in arresting Clay Shaw and naming him as the sort of like the number one conspirator in the conspiracy to kill JFK. But he wouldn't have been able to do any of that if this bartender, Cosimo, here, hadn't had that conversation with Dean Andrews and then finally fessed up to Jim Garrison. Of course, Clay Shaw will deny it later when he realizes the import of that, of what that would mean to him in a trial, even though he himself gave that alias to the arresting officer during processing after he was arrested. If you're Jim Garrison and you're pretty convinced that Clay Bertrand is Clay Shaw, and then you arrest him and the arresting officer takes the information and your subject or the person that you just arrested corroborates without even realizing that he is indeed this mysterious Clay Bertrand, you feel pretty solid going to court with that information, which is one of the reasons why when Garrison brought the trial to begin with, he didn't rely on his own judgment. He actually went before a panel of judges here in Orleans Parish. He said, okay, here's my evidence. Do I have enough to proceed to trial? Do I have enough to indict? Do I have enough to arrest? And this independent panel of judges ruled unanimously that he did. Now, this is before the judge threw out some of that evidence and all of his witnesses died. But at the beginning, when people were saying Garrison was out over his skis and he was on a witch hunt, he didn't have evidence, he was just trying to get publicity for himself, that wasn't true, because Garrison had gone through a rigorous process with that 5-judge panel to make sure that he was not letting any personal animus or any politics or anything get in the way and cloud his judgment. So he put all his evidence on the table in front of that 5-judge panel, and they said, you have more than enough evidence to indict, to arrest, and go to trial. Okay.